Hi, my name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel. In October, I read a very mixed bag of books. I had some that I found that I really loved and some that were just middle of the road, and I had a DNF. The first book that I read in October was actually my Buzzword Readathon Challenge book, which was to have a title with a relationship in it, so like mother, father, daughter, etc. And for this, I read The Lover by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This was a really short story, and I thought it was good. Like, I liked the atmosphere, I liked the writing. We didn't spend enough time with the characters to really get to know them in any major capacity, but I thought the dynamic between the main character and her sister was definitely interesting, to say the least. And there was adultery and a little touch of magic, just a little hint of magic in here. And I think the ending was also really cool. It is literally so short that I don't want to tell you anything. I think the synopsis basically says that a man comes into town. Two sisters both kind of like are attracted to him. One sister is like, oh my gosh, like it's finally my turn. Like, you know, my sister always has like people who fall in love with her. She's so beautiful. And I feel like it's finally my turn. And then lo and behold, this guy marries her sister and not her. But then they end up fucking around together anyways. And it's basically just about that relationship, her strained relationship with her sister, and then there's like a little third component that I won't spoil just because, again, it's literally like only 58 pages, so I don't want to get too deep. But I thought it was fun and atmospheric for October. It was definitely the right vibes, and even though I wish it was longer because I did really like the writing style, I think for what it was fine, and like it did what it wanted to do, so I gave this a 3.5 stars. The next book I read in October I listened to on audio, and this was The Perfect Son by Frida McFadden. This book was an experience, to say the least. The mother was like a little bit too obsessed with her son, and essentially the plot of this is that like this mom is like, oh my gosh, my family is perfect, my life is perfect, my kids are perfect, until like one day a girl goes missing and she's like, oh my god, like maybe my son isn't perfect after all. That's about all I can tell you without spoiling anything, because there are quite a few twists in here. I feel like some of them are kind of like you roll your eyes at them, and some of them were kind of shocking. So it was like a mixture of like good moments and bad moments. It definitely was easy to listen to. I felt like I was listening to like a Lifetime TV drama. Those made for TV movies, if you know what I'm talking about. As a matter of fact, there is a Lifetime TV movie with Elijah Wood and Cully McCulkin when they were both young, and it's called like The Good Son or something. And honestly, like it has very similar vibes. This one I also gave a 3.5 stars just because of how like compulsively listenable it was. I don't really think it had much going for it other than the fact that it was like just so dramatic that it was wildly entertaining for that alone. Like definitely not the best thing I've ever read, but it was good when I read it. I listened to it and I've already forgotten a lot about it. But I give it 3.5 just because like it was fun. It's whatever. I also finally finished my reread of The Assassin's Blade this month by Sarah J. Maas with my friend Danny. I gave this a 4.25 stars. I really like these stories. I think that they are good world building and good character building. I think it really shows the depths of Selena as a teen and just kind of explores her circumstances a little bit more. I'm not gonna really bore you with too much about this because we all know what it's about. So 4.25 stars. The next thing I read in October was Our Last Echoes by Kate Alice Marshall. This is the first thing I've ever read by this author, and I thought the premise sounded so cool and I was really excited to read it. The synopsis says, in 1973, the 31 residents of Bitter Rock disappeared. In 2003, so did my mother. Now I've come to Bitter Rock to find out what happened to her and to me, because Bitter Rock has many ghosts and I might be one of them. And then on the back, the tagline says, maybe you don't have to die to be a ghost. And I was so intrigued by the initial setup here, where this main character goes and looks for her mother on this island where she used to be a scientist. I don't really even know what they were studying, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But essentially there's like mist on the island that comes out at night, and people like are like, don't go out at night, like don't go in the mist. And so I'm like, oh shit, like, you know, is it aliens? Is there like some kind of like eldritch horror waiting them in the mist? And unfortunately the answer to the question like What's in the Mist, like as soon as I found out what it was, like I don't know why, but I just immediately lost interest. I did make it all the way through this book only because I had the audiobook, and I just kind of put it on and did chores, and like I just put it on when I like had nothing else that my hands could be doing to like turn it off. So I put it on when I was busy, specifically because I knew that was the only way I was going to get through it. And I did give this a 2 stars. The only reason I didn't give it a 1 star is because, again, like the premise was so cool. And I honestly think that if this had started the same but maybe gone in like a little bit of a different direction, like I definitely could have liked it more, because the beginning was really interesting and had me hooked. The first like 20% I was really intrigued, and it just really went downhill, I think, once I kind of found out like what was up with the mist situation. So unfortunately for me, this was a miss. However, I do have another book by this author that I definitely still think I'm going to give it a shot. Like I'm not going to write her off completely. This is a YA, and I would be interested to know if she has any adult books, so I'm gonna have to check on that, because I feel like her ideas are good. I just don't know if her execution is there, or maybe if it's just because it's the genre, like because it's YA, or if I could get into an adult book by her and it might be better. I also read The Haunting of Hill House this month, and I started the show when it first came out. I watched, I think, all of season 1 and then maybe like 1 episode of season 2. I don't remember watching more than that, and I would love to go back and rewatch it because it definitely like is creepy and scary to me, and I'm a baby, so it's not really hard to scare me when it comes to like visual media, but unfortunately for the book, it just kind of felt unfinished. I don't know if it's because it's so short, but I definitely didn't love this as much as I thought I would. I do think it had good moments. There was one scene with like a creepy like haunting moment where 2 of the girls were in the room and they were like experiencing something, and like that scene was definitely like a little bit like, you know, made me tuck my feet up under the covers a little tighter. But overall, like I feel like the main guy, I can't even remember his name, I think he's a professor, but he like, I don't know, he felt a little misogynistic towards women in general, but also especially like towards his wife, and he just gave me the ick a little bit. And I was kind of hoping to get to the house sooner. I think they spent a lot of time blabbing about like, oh, so and so is gonna come to the house, so and so is gonna come to the house, blah blah blah, backstory, and I'm like, if I'm reading a haunted house story, like I want to read about the haunted house. I don't want to hear about your backstory. Like, no offense, but if I'm reading a haunted house story, like I kind of expect people to like die and be haunted and like have bad shit happen to them, and I don't really want to get their backstory like up front. Essentially, I kind of like getting flashbacks in like small snippets when there's like horror going on, but I don't really love like here's a shit ton of backstory and then like a couple scary things happening at the end. So overall, like I thought it was just okay. I gave it a 2.5 stars. Like it's fine. I think I might try another Shirley Jackson in the future, but this one was definitely not for me. In October, I also read an arc of A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. I have a video reading this arc and 2 others that I will link in the card and down below if you want to check it out. This one, unfortunately, did not live up to the hype for me. So the premise of this one is that there is a girl named Lorelai who is a naturalist, and she's going on this expedition with other naturalists and folklorists, and they're all just kind of like scholarly, like whimsical scholars, I guess. Like they're all folklorists in their own way and naturalists in their own way. And Lorelai is said to have this rivalry with a girl named Sylvia, and their like mentor person gets murdered early on in this expedition, and they kind of like have to find out what happens to her, and they're also like searching for this magical spring. And I just feel like we spent a lot of time in this book meandering around the plot. Like we never actually got to the plot until like the last 80% of the book. Like a lot of things were happening, I guess. It's hard to explain. I felt like a lot of things were happening, but they felt meaningless. They didn't feel integral to the plot. They didn't feel like they needed to happen in order to progress the plot. And a lot of things happened that didn't progress the plot. And then when the plot finally did like start getting into momentum, like I just felt so disconnected from it, and I really could not have given a shit about what was happening to these characters. And I made it to 77%, kicking and dragging my feet the whole way before where someone finally talked me into just DNFing it and reviewing it at 77% completed. So this one I have no rating for. I, again, DNF'd it. I think if I had to rate it based off of what I read, I'd probably give it a 2 stars because it was just really boring. And again, I felt so disconnected from the characters. They didn't really feel like lively to me. I felt disconnected from the plot. The plot and the characters felt disconnected from each other also, which was really strange. And I feel like nothing happened and too much happened all at the same time. So it was a little disappointing for me, and I'm really sad about it because the cover is gorgeous, and I think like the premise had a lot of promise, but the execution was not good. I'm trying not to be mean. I really feel like I was reading like a first draft. I would honestly have loved to seen this book get like a couple more rounds of edits and like continuity and maybe just like some fine tuning. Like the prose itself was fine, but I couldn't even be enamored with the prose because of how bored I was by these characters. I feel like they didn't have enough personality and the plot didn't have enough intrigue for me to give a shit about either or the plot or the characters. And again, that's just really disappointing. I might try something else from this author, although I did have somebody on Instagram say that they felt the same way about this book for like all of Alison Saff's writing, so I might try one more. I'm not gonna write her off completely, but yeah, for the hype that this book got, I really was quite let down by it. And another book I read in October is You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaylin Barron. I read this on my cabin stay weekend, which I will have a vlog coming soon. So this video will probably be up before the cabin vlog, but I'll have to link it down in the description for the future. But this book really took me by surprise. It was so fun and like engaging, and I really found myself, you know, a little bit on edge, a little bit spooked out. Like I read this at a cabin in the woods, and this takes place at a camp with a bunch of cabins in the woods, and there's a lake right by the cabin, and I was like on a canal, and so like I was like by the water. This was by the water, and so it was very perfect for the time and place that I was. This could not have been a better choice for me. So essentially at Camp Mirror Lake, Charity is the final girl, and essentially like the whole camp is like a big theater production where they mimic like a slasher movie, and people pay to come stay here, and then they get scared, and then like whoever survives the night gets like a t-shirt and like a picture or something like that. I just thought it was so fun, and there were some twists and turns. I do think that there was like a little moment in like the 70% mark where I was like, I don't like where this is going, but then it like brung it back around and it got better again. And then the ending really just solidified like this was a great story, and this author has like a really great I don't know what to say. I don't want to spoil anything, but it was so fun. It was campy in like the literal sense where it was at a camp, and in the thematical sense of like camp, and it just it just surprised me a lot. It surprised me a few times, and it was just a good time. I highly recommend this. Highly recommend this. I gave this 4.5 stars. I think it was fantastic. And for being so short, I feel like we got a lot of information and a lot of things happened. And even though the action didn't exactly pick up like really fast, I think that the atmosphere and the spookiness picked up really fast. So we were already on edge before the like slasher aspect came into play here. And it was just a fantastic, lovely, scary, great time. Highly recommend. And the last book that I finished in October is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Now, I'm not going to say much about this here because I have a whole 55-minute vlog about this book in particular, which I will link in the card and down below. So please check it out if you want to hear spoilery thoughts about The Raven Boys. But I will just say that this book took me by surprise. I really didn't think I was gonna love it. I thought like I might give it like a 2.5, 3 stars, but this one ended up squeaking out a 4.5 stars. And I think that the characters were the driving force for me, which makes sense if you watch my vlog. And I do think that like the plot, as cliche as it sounds from the way that people describe it, it actually like was really unique in places. And it did have a little bit of like YA clichéness, but I mean, that's just like tropes in general, right? Like tropes are gonna trope, you know? Like I don't know how else to explain it, but this one follows 4 boys from a prep school called Aglenby and a girl named Blue, and their lives just kind of get intertwined. Blue's family are all psychics, and she has like this amplifier ability, and she cannot kiss the boy that she's like destined to be true loves with, or he will die. And the four boys are on a hunt for this like lost legendary folklore like king, I guess. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I think it was really good. Go watch my vlog because I definitely have a lot of thoughts while reading this book. I have some ups, I have some downs, and it was a wild ride, and I honestly had a lot of FOMO for not reading this for so long. So I'm finally glad to say that I read The Raven Boys, and I did in fact love it. That's everything I read in October. Let me know what your favorite book was that you read last month. Did you read anything spooky? And have you read any of the books that I talked about in this video? I'd love to know your thoughts about them. If you've made it this far, please leave a sunflower emoji down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!